From UFOs to psychic powers and government conspiracies, history is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now, or learn the stuff they don't want you to know.
And in other news, someone may have stolen the Ark of the Covenant. Yes, that Ark of the Covenant, the same one referenced in both the Bible and then later the Indiana Jones film franchise, which are two weird bookends to put on that, I guess. But
and if you're a longtime listener of the show or viewer of the YouTube channel, you know that we have attempted to find the location of the Ark of the Covenant multiple times. And we thought we narrowed it down, at least if one really did exist, where it probably was. And this story is bringing that all home.
Is that the one where the Nazis get their faces melted?
Yeah, in Indiana Jones, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not the Ark. Yeah, got it. Yeah. Not the Bible version.
Right, but that Indiana Jones scene is based very loosely on some of the warnings about the biblical ark, which is, how one should or should not gaze upon it.
It does turn out there are no Nazis in the Bible.
You're right. In the version that most people use, I would assume there might be a couple of, independent interpretations.
A remix version floating around that Hitler put forth, perhaps.
And, there's always somebody writing a third testament throughout history of one sort or another. Well, if that's okay, then, guys, let's start with that story. So spoiler alert, by way of background, what Matt's referring to when he says, we looked for the Ark of the Covenant several times over the course of this show. That is true. We were intensely interested in this, stuff they want you to know always loves hidden history and historical mysteries. The Bible is full of those, or the stories, places, people, events, artifacts depicted in the Bible are always of great interest to historians. Like we've seen in other explorations of history, the world eats the works of man, so it can be incredibly difficult to verify things that happened in the 11th century, much less things that happened back in what we call the BCEs. So it's tough to figure out where facts and myths begin. But the Ark of the Covenant is a little bit of an exception. So basically what it is a gold-covered wooden chest, and it's got a lid over it. And according to the story, it contains the 2 actual stone tablets of the 10 Commandments. And then you'll see other biblical sources saying it contains a pot of manna, Aaron's rod, and so on. The weird thing that we found was that for a very, very long time, there has been a group of people in Ethiopia who claim to possess the actual 100% genuine Ark of the Covenant. And keep in mind, Ethiopia itself has a storied ancient history. And in our earlier works, we dove into the possibilities that it could be there. And one of the things that we found, or something they believed to be the Ark could be there, we should say, important distinction. One of the things we found is that the story of the Ark ending up in Ethiopia is true in that there is a church that claims to possess it and has for a long time. And Matt, I know you'll recall, you'll recall it seemed that the keepers of the Ark were sincere. Their only rule is that they can't let anybody other than the priest view the Ark, but they will gladly describe it to you in detail, consistently.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, it's a point of contention because it feels like if you truly did have the Ark of some, you may want to show that off for numerous reasons, if not only to in some way make money to better secure that Ark. But, what we've read and what we've seen over the years is that one of the main reasons for not letting anyone see it is to kind of keep this air of mystery about it, because if they did truly have it, if they do truly have it, they want to protect it. And again, it struck us, and it strikes me currently right now as one of the main reasons that it feels like it might not be genuine, because it's almost like you could tell the tale of what this glorious ark looks like that you're keeping back here. It's just behind, this wall. You can't go back there, but no, it's there and it's glorious. And let me tell you all about it. It strikes you as maybe not being genuine, but when something like, this story that we're getting into today comes out, it does make you feel like maybe there was something back there.
I think it's important to say too, just in general, holy relics or like physical objects that are associated with religion are super powerful, because it's almost like, proof positive, like this is real. See, I have this thing that like proves the existence of God or proves the existence of a particular, dogma, like the Shroud of Turin, for example, which is like this piece of cloth that supposedly was Jesus's burial, shroud or whatever. Things like that have a lot of political power.
True. And I like that you're differentiating between political power and maybe supernatural power. Yeah,
absolutely. That's exactly what I meant. Yes.
Reliquaries are hugely important because for true believers, just a reliquary, for instance, is the container of a body part of a saint. So those things are hugely important for both of those reasons that you just described, Noel. They may prove the physical existence of that saint or holy figure. And then they also are, and I don't mean to sound cold when I say this, just historically look at it. It's great marketing. It's a mark of prestige for the church or the institution that has it. What makes us different from the church in the next village over? Well, we have the two thumb bones of, Saint Martin on toast, which is hopefully not a real saint. And I apologize if that is a real saint and I've offended anyone. But yeah, Saint Martin on toast, patron saint of thumbs. We've got his thumbs. Come to our church service. This problem or this phenomenon is at its most extreme degree when we're talking about something like the Ark of the Covenant. One of the explanations or rationales behind not showing this to the uninitiated is that you'll recall in the in biblical writing, the men of Beth Shemesh gazed upon the ark, and as punishment, God smote 70 of them, or 50,070 in some translations. Again, all this stuff happened a long time ago.
Can I say I'm a huge fan of the tense smote. To smite, one was smote. But I also love that it also applies to being like in love with somebody, to be smitten. It's a funny etymology there.
And so that's their reasoning. It's a thing that's happened. A lot of folks in the West aren't aware that to the true believers of this theory, the mystery of the ark was solved long ago. But fast forward to the modern day. Ethiopia is one of the oldest countries in the world that's been extant from its inception to the modern day. It's believed to have developed as a country all the way back in 980 BCE. So Ethiopia was around during the days of early Christianity. Ethiopia was around when a lot of the events depicted in the Bible occurred. I mean, not Genesis, but you get the gist of what I'm saying, the genegist of what we're saying here. So Aksum, Ethiopia. The place is the Mariam Tision Church, also known as the Tewahedo Church, the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church. And this location claims to be the home of the biblical Ark of the Covenant. It was moved, apparently, to the Chapel of the Tablet, which is adjacent to the old church, because get this, a divine heat from the tablets within the ark had cracked the stones of the previous storage facility. it was actually Emperor Haile Selassie's wife, Empress Menen, who paid for the construction of the new chapel. So this happened in recent history, but even more recently, this holy site was under attack. And the locals, just to give you the headline here, the locals are convinced that part of the motivation for the attack, which killed around 750 people, was to take possession of the biblical Ark of the Covenant. This is per the Europe External Program with Africa, and the Ethiopian National Defense Force reported to them that the church had been attacked and hundreds of people were hiding in the church. They were brought out into the square and shot. You can look at video showing the aftermath of the massacre. The military has been fighting with anti-communist insurrectionary forces that control parts of the region. So we can't dismiss the enormous tragedy of almost 1,000 people dying in this attack. But we also have to ask ourselves, why wasn't this reported more often in the West? Anywhere, really. Yeah.
I cannot find a publication that has any of the information there. The most trustworthy news source is that it's from that EEPA.be, the Europe External Program with Africa. And it's just it's a tiny little sentence essentially that describes this thing.
Yeah. So the EEPA report is the most credible source I could find here. And it does prove that people were attacked by a force including 8 tanks, 20 buses, 5 heavy trucks. I mean, people were hiding in the church to survive, not for fun. But this report does also specifically mention the local concern that the ultimate goal of the attack was to remove the ark from its resting place, or the alleged ark, we should say. Although to the point about lack of Western coverage, my thought was, could it be possible that people were mentioning the Ark of the Covenant here as a way to get more coverage from the West? Is that what the aim was? I mean, I'm not accusing anybody of trying to put their fingers on the PR scale here, but as we were taking this apart, and again, there's not a ton of reporting on this, especially not in English. As we were taking this apart, we found that there is an information war going on. And Ethiopian listeners, please write in and let us know your take on the ground, or if you know anybody in the region, what they think of this. But because we've seen people saying that some folks are welcoming this anti-communism group, the Tigray People's Liberation Front. It seems like there are shifting opinions at times between the government, between support for the government and support for the insurrectionists, which, if you think about it, does have a certain type of logic to it, because the insurrectionist or the TPLF would be made of people from these regions often, right? It's not an outside force is what I'm saying. Also, there's a tricky thing I noticed. The Tigray group has been called anti-communist, but then they've also been called communist. And then one time there was a coalition with the government. So now they're being called ethnic rebels. It's like the story and the reporting keeps shifting. Everything about this story is pretty tricky. But what do you guys think? Do you think, okay, first, do you think it's feasible that violent groups would attack these kinds of institutions to sell artifacts and, historical documents and stuff? I think that's 100% possible. I think it's a huge business. I don't know. What do you guys think? Is it too much trouble? I mean, 750 people dead.
I don't know, man. It feels like it would be worth it to sweep that church, right? If you have a military convoy moving through the area, that church is essentially on the way. Why would you not sweep the church for some kind of, as terrible as it sounds, another way to fund the war effort, right? Mm-hmm. But I think that would be the only reason. There's a story out of Reuters that is from last year, like late November, early December, and it's talking about some of the same types of missions. Title is Ethiopian military operation in Tigray is complete, Prime Minister says. That's the title of the Reuters article. And it's describing similar things where many thousands are believed to have been killed throughout this campaign, or since 2018 at least, when the fighting kind of began, as well as, countless people fleeing to Sudan and other countries. And it's describing, some of the same things that we're hearing in this latest report. And this is at least giving it's feeling like, and again, it's weird for me to trust Reuters, but I do trust Reuters, more. I've found that the other story in a couple of places, but I do trust them in some weird way. And maybe that is my own, I don't know, cognitive dissonance of some sort, but it's just showing that this is an early report that we're telling you about today. And that may be one of the reasons why we're not hearing more about it.
Mm-hmm. And, we could do an entire episode on the illegal antiquities market. I think the most famous example in the West is probably World War II. But don't assume that was just one, that was just some sort of historical one-off. The war in Iraq led to the looting of the museums of note in that part of the world. There's a thriving international art trade, partially for money laundering, which I think I don't think it's controversial to say that at this point. But my last question for you guys before we move on, could there be something to this story? Could there be, supernatural or not, some kind of artifact as old as the Ark of the Covenant? I appreciate bringing up Shroud of Turin because it's conclusively proven that is probably a myth, I think, from the 12th or 13th centuries, I want to guess. But but maybe is this Ark the same thing, or is it just something? Like, so much time has passed, it would be amazing if it was just some other box or some other container from around the same time. We would still learn so much from it. If there's a box, is it roughly the same age as we believe the Ark of the Covenant to be? Is it a hoax? Could it have some actual, I don't know, something weird about it? Cracking foundations via heat from tablets it's possible for a heat source to crack a stone foundation, but I feel like maybe just time could account for that. I don't know.
For sure. I mean, historians and archaeologists have long kind of quibbled over whether this thing could possibly exist. There's a great article in National Geographic says why the Ark of the Covenant is one of history's enduring mysteries by Richard A. Lovett and Scott Hoffman. And there's a really interesting quote from National Geographic Society fellow Fred Hebert, who believes this quest to find this thing is ultimately doomed to fail. He says, "We're talking about things at the crossroads between myth and reality. I think it's great to have stories like that of the Ark of the Covenant, but I do not believe, as a field archaeologist, that we can use the scientific method to prove or disprove them."
Well, yeah, you could. You walk into the church and you go, "Show me the Ark," and they go, "No," and you go, "Show me the Ark."
Yeah, I was going to ask Matt, what do you think to that question I had originally asked? Do you think it feels like there's something in there, right? And I know not to be all too seven about it, but there's, what's in the box?
But that's the whole thing. Like, how can sure there might be a box or an ark, but is it the box or the ark? You know, that's the whole question. That's my whole point or question.
I'm gonna go with there's nothing in that room, and there's not a thing in there, and it's a place. It's a place to worship. It's like or it's a person that they're saying is the Ark of the. No, I'm just joking. I have no idea. Nobody knows unless you've been in there. And our call is for anyone who has been in that room, tell us what you saw. Or if you were just anywhere near that area when this went down, what actually happened over the past couple of weeks there.
Mm. And, if this were long form improv, we would end up saying, turns out the real arc is the friends we made along the way.
Yes.
We're using a bit of levity here, but of course, the situation in Ethiopia is massively dangerous. It's unsustainable. It's being underreported, in our opinion. So we would love to hear once again from people on the ground or anyone who knows someone on the ground. Stay safe out there, folks.